Welcome to the 111 Approach podcast, your go-to space for deep thoughts, real talk, and exploration of everything from spirituality to self-development and the mysteries of life with some light-hearted humour along the way. I'm your host, Lakshmi, aka the 1 Minute Healer, and each episode will dive into different topics, sometimes personal, sometimes thought-provoking, but always authentic. So whether you're here for some new perspectives, inspiration, or just a fresh take on the world with a bit of randomness thrown into the mix, you're definitely in the right place. So what are you waiting for? Let's get into it. Hello, and welcome to another episode of the 111 Approach podcast with me, Lakshmi, the 1 Minute Healer. And today's topic is a big one. I would say, arguably, it is a topic to end all topics, or to even start all topics, or even to be the most important of all topics in the history of all topics, because it is so important, this topic. I keep saying topic. If you're playing a drinking game with my episode, drink every time I say the word topic. You'll be drunk. You'll be drunk already before we've even started. But before I even reveal what this topic is, we obviously have to start with gratitude, because that's what we do. So thank you so much for all the support, all the feedback and all the comments. Thank you for listening and being here with me today. Today's topic, like I said, is one that I feel we need to talk about so much, and we need to understand it, and we need to utilize it every single day. But yet so many of us don't know how to do this properly and have little to no idea of how important this topic is. And it is, of course, the big C word, communication, because I'd go as far as to say 99% of people's issues, problems and misunderstandings come from a case of a lack of communication or miscommunication and just not understanding each other. Because guess what? The communication is shit. So I have had many experiences whereby I've been on the receiving end of really poor communication, and I've also been on the giving end of my communication not being so great. She says as a podcast host and is communicating with lots of people all over the world. But at the end of the day, you know, most of us are able to talk. And I say most of us because we have to remember not everyone is blessed with the power of speech, but yet we still find ways to communicate differently, right? So there's non-verbal communication. Deaf people communicate with sign language. Babies communicate by crying and drawing attention to themselves in ways. So every single person, and actually every single species on this planet, in some way, shape or form communicates. And that's why it is the fundamental foundation of every single relationship in your life. Yet so many people are so bad at it, and it's no wonder why every single counsellor and every single therapist on this planet will tell you that the key to positive, authentic, real, honest relationships is communication. And it is the reason why so many relationships break down, because there is a lack of communication, whether that's your romantic relationships, your family relationships, your relationships with your friends, your work colleagues, pretty much every relationship in your life, right? Communication is key. That's where that phrase comes from. So yeah, I just wanted to do a topic for the people playing the drinking game. You're going to be so smashed by the end of this episode if you aren't already. So where do I even start with why communication is so important? Because every interaction is a form of communication, even if it's non-verbal. There are different ways to communicate. So communication is really the fundamental flaw in all relationships, really. And that's why relationships break down. And so the topic of communication has come up because I've gone through quite a substantial growth period, I guess we're going to call it, in the last couple of years. And when people go through significant self-development changes, or people want to call it a spiritual awakening or the dark night of the soul, whatever label you want to put on it, or whatever kind of period of change you go through. And you know, if you are not going through periods of change, I would be very concerned, because that means you're stuck. And if you are stuck, You are not evolving. And we are evolutionary beings. We are supposed to adapt and change, as does every single thing, every single living thing, and even non-living things. Think about it. Think about what phone you're using today, and think 5 years how different your phone was. Even technology is adapting, evolving, changing, growing and expanding. Everything does, because it has to, otherwise it gets left behind. So if you are not growing or changing, then honey, my heart goes out to you, because that for me would be probably one of the worst feelings, feeling stuck with nowhere to go. And so this is why I'm really passionate about helping people become unstuck and to reconnect to themselves and just try and wade through that sludge. And because that's what it feels like sometimes when you're stuck, and it feels like you're in a pit of sludgy mess and you're like, there's no way out. It's sometimes like quicksand and it feels like it's sinking and taking over. But trust me, we've all been there in some way, shape or form. And if you are listening to this, then guess what? It means you still have your head above the sludge, and there is still a way out. So I'm going to be totally honest here. I'm not really entirely sure like how to start or where to even go with this topic of communication, because there are so many branches, because it affects every single part of our life. I guess for me on this episode, and me recording it at a time whereby I've gone through quite a lot of changes and, like I said, growth and understanding and uncovering and remembering of my true self, my soul self, and really peeling back the layers and taking off the rose-tinted glasses, I guess, or the glasses that society put on me. And to be fair, like, I do wear actual glasses as well. Your girl is visually impaired. What can I say? Like, my prescription is pretty bad. Sometimes I play top trumps with my friends and be like, what prescription are you? And they'll be like, I'm -3. And I'm like, bitch, that's nothing. I'm -8.25. And they're just like, what? And then I say, well, I have people in my family, my sister, and also one of my cousins. They could be like legally blind because they're like -10 or something. This is crazy. Anyway, why are we talking about prescriptions? Oh, yes. Rose tinted glasses. So yeah, I've been taking off the rose tinted glasses now because my energy is taking me into a direction of like, what is actually going on? I've always said quality over quantity, and it's becoming so true now in every aspect of my life, whereby I've had to make some really difficult decisions and step away from relationships and friendships and people from my family, because there's just been a massive, massive breakdown in the relationship itself. And guess what the culprit was? It was lack of communication or miscommunication and misunderstanding. And then following that, the lack of wanting to sit and just communicate and uncover and unpick and be real and raw, and attempt to try and fix it. So I have always been one of those people whereby if I want to sort something out, I'm like, let's just sort it out. Let's just sit down, even if you're angry or pissed off, let's just hash it out, especially with your loved ones. Tell me what you're thinking. This is what I'm thinking. This is how I'm feeling. You said this, I said this, back and forth. What did you mean by it? Because most of the time, when people are reacting from emotions or hurt, a lot of things get said, but they're not necessarily meant, okay? Because it was just in the moment, you're feeling your feels, you didn't know how to process it, and it's come out completely wrong, and the other person has taken it in a different way as well. And that's mainly, for argument's sake, the pun there, is how most arguments go down or disagreements go down. Am I right or am I right? And then I just remembered I'm on a podcast and you can't really respond back to me. So anyway, I've come to learn, obviously, that everyone works in different ways. So there's some people who are like me, who like to sort out things there and then, nip it in the bud. On the flip side, there are those people who want to leave the conversation or the situation as it is, step away from it, gather their thoughts, gather their emotions, calm down, take breaths, and want to then sit and discuss it when they're in a more calmer state of mind, which I think is a good thing. However, there's other people who basically do not like confrontation or conflict at all. So they would very happily like just say, right, leave it, drop it. They just get so scared about the fact that they're going to have a conversation about something that's probably not the nicest conversation. And they just want to brush it under the carpet. And in the culture that I grew up in, this was mainly the case because you wanted to show people that, hey, we're all happy families and everything's fine and dandy and we don't argue and everything's perfect. And it's like keeping up with the Joneses, right? However, when has that ever been the case in anybody's life? And I just don't understand why people still continue to adopt this manner when we know how bad it is for us, because we shouldn't be just shoveling stuff under the carpet. We shouldn't just be trying to bury the hatchet. We should be trying to fix the hatchet, communicate. But hang on one minute. What even is a hatchet? Let me go and quickly research this. Okay, so I found out, obviously, a hatchet. I know what a hatchet is. I don't know why I said what is a hatchet. I know what a hatchet is. It's a bit like an axe. And I looked it up, and the original meaning of burying the hatchet originated from Native Indians, so Native American tribes, who, after a peace agreement, would symbolically bury their weapons, hatchets being one of them, to signify, like, we've ended this argument and we are now at peace with, whoever they were having conflict with. And this was a sign that they had come to a resolution or the end of a quarrel. But obviously, in order for that to have happened, they must have had some kind of conflict resolution, i.e. communication. So I don't understand how people can just be like, right, let's just drop it. Now, I do believe you can agree to disagree, but I also believe that both parties should have the space to be able to say their piece and the other party to be open to listening and receive it, because I feel it's so unfair when just one person's like, I'm not ready to have this conversation, and they just drop it. And then you wait and you're waiting and you're waiting and you're waiting. And then the other person, someone like me who likes to resolve things quickly because I don't like shit lingering around, because for me, the more time that passes, it's more difficult to remember what exactly happened that caused the conflict in the first place, and B, like, you just don't want to be carrying that heavy energy around with you. And fine, some people can just like forget about it and just leave it, but some people can't. And some people, it stays in their energy, or they overthink, or again, they make a mountain out of a molehill. And so I've just always been in that mindset of like, just sort it out sooner rather than later, because also you just never know what's going to happen. And this is why they would always say, don't go to bed angry, try and resolve things there and then. Now, you've got to take everything with a little bit of pinch of salt. There can't be just one flat rule for everyone, because sometimes actually going to sleep when you've been having an argument, say with your partner or your sibling or whatever, if you go to sleep and actually you wake up the next day with a fresh outlook and you think, actually, maybe I was just, a lot of the times, let's be honest, hangry, lack of sleep, tired. There's lots of things that contribute to our way that we react. And so sometimes actually when you've gotten up in the morning and you think back on it, be like, actually, it wasn't that bad. I was just probably really in my feels, right? And so actually going to bed, like I said, it can actually help the situation. However, like, if you've had some kind of major situation happen with someone obviously you care about, because let's be honest, if you didn't care about the person or people that you were having these issues with, you would just be like, do one in it, I don't give a shit. But if you actually do give a shit, then this is the reason why these conflicts take up space in your brain and your energy. And I speak about this so passionately because I've had several recently that have happened, some with very close family members that I've unfortunately now had to take a step back and just be like, right, I've done as much as I can, but they are still refusing to have the conversations to try and sort things out, or even not even sort things out, because I appreciate you don't always have to sort things out. Sometimes those relationships have come to an end for a reason, but at least give that space to hear that person out, because I honestly fully believe that most of us on this planet do not come with malice in our heart, and especially when you're with loved ones. And if stuff happens, things get said, or mistakes happen, I find that a lot of people just don't want to admit that they made a mistake or they were wrong, which makes it really difficult, because they will defend themselves till the day they die because they are so afraid to say, yes, actually, I made a mistake. But why? Because we all make mistakes. We all make mistakes. We're human. We're meant to make mistakes. Even as adults, we are meant to make mistakes, because we are not enlightened beings, because otherwise we would not be in a physical body. We would be in our soul energy, right? We would have learnt the lessons that we were here to learn in this avatar, and then we're just like, zippy, done, end of this game. Let's level up and go to the next one. So I don't understand why people are so afraid to say, yeah, actually, I fucked up there. Because I do. I'll be like, yeah, I made a mistake, man. I'm really sorry. Let's sort it out. Or let me see how I can make this right. That hasn't come for all of my life, let me just say. I haven't been this, what's the word? I haven't been this fully aware of my shortcomings. I used to be one of those people that used to deflect and defend and react poorly. And sometimes I still do. But it's the level of awareness of like, right, yeah, I cocked up there. But I have no problem saying that. But yet a lot of people do. Which is why it becomes really difficult, especially when you're on a self-development journey and you start uncovering and becoming super aware of not only yourself and how you interact with people, but then conversely how other people act and react. And the level of self-awareness in others becomes really apparent. That's where I believe that the universe or God or whatever you want to call it does come in and actually start moving things out of your way. And that would be in the terms of breaking away from relationships, friendships, family ships, whatever the ships are, they just start to break away. And it can be really hard. I mean, really hard, especially when it's people you've known for most of your life, and especially when it's your family as well, because it can hurt. It can really hurt because you're connected to these people and they should know you and they should know the real you. But the news flash is, honey, to some extent, even you don't know the real you. And you're changing and you're growing. So when you become a newer version of yourself, sometimes the people around you don't really recognize you because they're not on the same journey. Now, I'm not saying that your journey is better than theirs. It's just different. And when you do this work on yourself and you do spiritual work or self-development work or any kind of awareness level work, you will change. And unfortunately, if others around you are not doing, even if they are doing the same work, they may not be at the same pace. I've noticed it in my nuclear family, and I'm very blessed because we all are on a path of self-discovery, self-improvement, and we have been for a very long time, but we're all at different stages. So sometimes it can be even frustrating within my own family. It feels like we're going round and round. But actually, when you look at it, this going round in circles, you have to ask yourself, are you becoming aware quicker than you were before? Because that is a sign that you are making improvements and progress. Now, unfortunately, as I alluded to earlier, recently I've had to make really difficult decisions in my life to say goodbye and cut off, essentially, I guess, or take away. I don't like the word cut off because, I feel like sometimes relationships can get mended again at a later date. But for now, like sometimes maybe I guess you have to take a step back or break away, just so that you're not getting dragged into that same narrative, because it's just draining you. And so just to give you like an example or two about what's been going on in my life, and having to make these really difficult decisions to step away from very long relationships in my life, family members, and also more recently with my longest standing friendship group, ironically, or maybe not ironically. Maybe this is the reason I'm making this podcast episode today and putting it out as my way of kind of letting go fully and taking radical acceptance of the situation, which is something I've recently learned to do. Letting go is hard. Stepping away is hard. Making a decision is really hard. But if you can come into a state of acceptance, radical acceptance of just everything and anything that's going on in your life and around you, and you just accept it as, okay, this is happening. Okay, this is what I'm feeling. Okay, I accept this. I have a choice. I'm in the driver's seat. And you keep coming back to that. It makes, I wouldn't say it makes it easier. I guess it makes it a different game to play. I found that letting go of my friends and making that really difficult decision to not go on our 40th birthday holiday together this weekend, it still pains me and it still upsets me and it still hurts me, because when I look back on how everything went down and the breakdown of those relationships and that group was purely due to some miscommunication and then the lack of wanting to communicate within my friendship group, with me being quite vocal about how I was feeling, and that I did want to take the time to try and sort things out and communicate and put all of our cards on the table. And it's only recently when I left the group and I left them with a message saying how upset I was, even though I tried multiple times to try and get everyone to just let's talk about things, even if it's not directly linked to certain people. But as a friendship group, if one person or a few people are feeling a certain way, it affects the whole group energy, I guess. But everyone has their own way of doing things. But sometimes I feel when you are the most vocal, or when you are the one who's communicating the most because of your desire to have open, honest, authentic, genuine conversations and relationships in your life, it doesn't always fit everyone else's agenda. You know, everyone's lives and priorities and situations are very different. I understand that. And we all, every single one of us, is going through something. I don't think I've ever met or spoken to anyone who hasn't been going through something difficult in their life, which is really sad when you think about it, right? We may not always talk about it to everyone, but I can pretty much bet that literally 99% of the world is going through something difficult in some way, shape, or form. So we all have our stuff. But for me, I got really hurt because they didn't show up to my birthday party. I fucking sound like a 12-year-old, don't I? I had no friends at my birthday party. But yeah, no, it did really bother me, because I really genuinely, in my heart of hearts, had thought that by February we would have sorted out what was a very probably trivial misunderstanding. But I very quickly saw that there was no desire to speak about things, because a lot of people are scared of conflict and they're scared of communicating and they're scared of opening up, and I guess maybe they're scared or don't have the energy or capacity to have these kind of real conversations. Some of the comments I got back was, I'm just not here for the drama. And I was thinking, it's not drama when you're just communicating how you feel open and honestly. If that for somebody looks like drama to them, it made me realize that there's so many different perceptions and ways that people absorb information or take information that can get misconstrued. But again, it all comes back down to just having these conversations. And I guess this is maybe like a PSA, a public service announcement, for people to just start talking more, communicate more, make the time to sit and talk about how you feel, especially when you're not feeling great. But the reality is not everyone's going to be open to listening. And that for me is so sad, because that's where the relationships break down. Anyway, with that being said, letting go is really difficult. But when I sit back and I relay all the things that happened in the lead up to me making that decision not to go on this holiday, there were so many things. It was funny because I was relaying the series of unfortunate events, you could call it, to my cousin. And she even said, she goes, there were so many signs, Lakshmi, that you weren't supposed to go on that trip. Your energy is just not the same. Like, you have just expanded and moved out of that circle. Now, I don't like to say that in terms of like, I've done the work and my energy is no longer part of your group, because sometimes it can feel like that you're saying that your energy is better than somebody else's. It's just different now. And I think I've always felt like that. And the more people I've talked about this to have said similar things, you know, a lot of us have always felt a little bit as an outsider, even in their own friendship groups. And that's very much me. I've always felt that I was always like the add-on or the third wheel or the fifth wheel in this case. And I was always the like more quirky one, the more kind of weird one, the one that was a bit more out there. And I just didn't truly fit in anywhere, even within my friendships when it was a group setting. So I think I'm better with like just one-on-one. Anyway, I know a lot of people will probably resonate with that. And I just want to say, listen, you're not alone. And for the people who are listening to this and are probably thinking, oh, maybe I should communicate more, take this as a sign to please communicate more. Everybody, just fucking start communicating about everything. And if somebody says that you're causing drama, tell them to fuck off. Because, you know what? It's not drama. It's just being real and speaking your truth and speaking your feelings. And you're better off having too much communication than lack of communication. And it was quite ironic that the only friend that actually messaged me after I sent the message to the group and left the group, she said something along the lines of like, oh, I stepped away because just too much drama. And I didn't communicate that I had stepped away, and, you know, that was just the way I do things. And I was thinking, therein lies the problem. How was I supposed to know that you've taken a step back because you had too much on your plate? I mean, I'm not a mind reader. I'm slightly psychic, mostly psycho, but I'm not a mind reader in that way, you know. It's really important to tell people, even if it's just like, listen, I think I needed just a little bit of space right now. I'm just taking a step back. And that's it. You don't have to tell everyone everything, but a baseline level of communication would do the world wonders for everyone's relationships. And on that note, I'm going to end this probably very ranty and venty episode on communication. But if you have been playing the drinking game of drinking every time I say the word topic, let's just make it a little bit more fun and be like topic, topic, topic. And let's do a 1-minute meditation, as we always do. So I invite you, if it is safer to do so, closing your eyes, taking a deep breath in through your nose and out through your mouth. And I just want you to focus on your throat chakra. This is where we speak our truth, where we communicate largely through our voices, and just giving a moment of gratitude if you are able to communicate orally. Because, as I mentioned before, not everyone is able to, so we take this for granted. And unfortunately, not a lot of us feel safe enough to speak our truth and use our voice. And so let's try and change that by setting yourself some boundaries and setting yourself a goal to be honest with yourself and with others without the fear of being rejected. Because in truth, the only person you really need to communicate and be honest with yourself is you. Take a nice deep breath in. hold, and release out. Now, as I did that, I was feeling a lot of heat and tightness just in the center of my higher heart chakra. So not in the middle of your breast, just a few inches up, which is where we call the higher heart. So I was just doing also a little bit of healing and energy healing for anybody who's felt that as well, because I could feel a lot of heat and tightness. So if that was you while you were listening to this, please do drink some water. Feel free to reach out and DM me. You may need a little bit more of support, and I can definitely help with that if it's something you're aligned and guided to do. So with that in mind, as we end, please remember to download, rate and review this episode. It really means a lot. In all honesty, I don't really care because I don't do this podcast to try and be on like any of the podcast charts or anything. I'm purely just doing it because it is my favorite way of sharing my content and sharing my voice and trying to help people as I can in this way. So if you think somebody would benefit from listening to this episode about communication, do share it with them, and then if you are sharing it on your socials, do tag me and come and follow me. I do free 1-minute meditations on my Instagram. Just saying. Sending you all love, light and blessings. I will see you on the next episode.